Welcome to Revive Ministries Podcast. This month, we continue the conversation of finding our refuge in recovery. A safe place means very different things for very different people. When it comes to recovery, it's very individualized to the individual. Marcus Aurelius said this way: "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." I have a new guest today. Her name is Anna. I need to ask how to say your last name. Anna, really, I appreciate you coming in. I butcher so many last names that I apologize, but thank you so much.
Anna Lennyr, Robert.
Anna Lennyr. Well, here we are. I always start off with a disclaimer, all around the world, but in the U.S., if you are experiencing suicide thoughts or seek professional help, 1-800-273-8255 is National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. I always say, Anna, that people say it better than I do. I know this from a fact. It's a humbling experience. Alice Walker says it this way, similar to what Marcus Aurelius says. The most common way people give up their power is by thinking they don't have any. When you hear these words, what comes to mind?
When you hear these words, it comes to mind how I suffered 27 years in depression and with suicidal thoughts, because this is how you actually met me, Robert, right? So one of those sad stories, depression since the age of 7, and totally lost at the age of 38. I found out I have the same disease as my mom, died from overnight. So I said, why might I have one night to live? Right? So these kind of things where you believe that life is suffering. You believe that life is pointless. You believe that maybe somebody punished you in this lifetime, right? Because the weight on your shoulder is like the entire world. It's like holding the entire sky on your shoulder, right?
Yeah.
And this is a trap of your mind. And this is exactly, this quote that you mentioned, the most common way people give up their power is by thinking they don't have any. This is a trap of your own mind. Yeah. And when you discover how easy it is to untrap yourself, you'll be mad at yourself at the beginning, but you'll be happy you took the action to do it.
Yeah, and I when I think about this quote, I also think about, a lot of us say we don't have enough time for things, and we don't set boundaries for that time. Now, one person told me, if you don't respect your own time, no one else will. It comes down to that. And unfortunately, some of us, and we're going to continue the conversation, but when we think about, like you said, how we trap our minds and how we think that we don't have this power, sometimes we're so concerned about getting the exact certainty of what's going to play out. There's in life, you're not going to know every single thing. We try to measure with a lot of things we read or whatever, but there has to be a degree of uncertainty for there to be any hope.
And with that, Robert, how would you know how it is to be happy when you never experienced it?
Yeah.
How would you want to have a certainty that all this pain is gone when you never seen it? So for me, my whole life was suffering. Everybody I saw was suffering, right? My mom was an alcoholic. I was trying to save her. Everything was suffering. I had no clue that there is another world out there.
Yeah.
So what kind of certainty you gonna get when you don't know what you don't know?
Yeah. That's very true. Every day can't be a crisis situation. Every day,
Exactly.
One thing, working with clients, I ask them, do you have a hobby? They're like, I can have a hobby? I'm allowed to have a hobby? Yes, you are to have a hobby. You can't just, every day can't be a crisis situation, like I said. I want to ask a little bit more about you, Anna. You're new to the podcast. I like to have new guests, but I also like returning guests, so I hope I'm doing well so far. But Anna, you work with teenagers and adults to build strong, supportive family relationships. Why do you believe this is important to address, especially today?
Because I'm also an antidepressant expert. And everybody that comes with me with depression, that they decide to overcome depression, and it takes about 3 to 5 months to do the work to make that decision, everybody blames between the age of 6 and 25, that time frame where they only saw suffering, and they play the same game as adults in depression. They practically make their world has been built between the ages of 6 and 25, and if it has been built in pain, this is how they play it overall. So yes, it takes 3 to 5 months to overcome depression. Some people take longer, some people take 9 weeks, okay? But we're trying to prevent that, Robert. This is the whole thing. If you can prevent it, it takes 6 weeks, right? So this is why we're working with teenagers, parents, and adults to try to prevent this problem from overcoming, so you don't have to spend 6 months of your life overcoming it, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you look at the perspective, my family was in depression for 3 generations. My mom died from it. Actually, today, my mom's birthday is today. She died at the age of 55 overnight. So if you look at it, I spent 27 years in this condition. I'll take 6 months. For me, it took 7 because I was stubborn, okay? But I'll take 7 months to get out of 27 years of trapping, right?
Yeah.
But most people don't even know this is an option.
Yeah, and it's interesting just when you're thinking about homes. There were a lot of times when I work with people, there's not enough housing resource, but home it describes a whole different thing. You talk about the family, you talk about the environment around you. I always kind of look at the environment as does it cultivate healing? Does it cultivate an idea that you can actually say today, like you said before, if everything is pain and you don't know what's outside there, sometimes the environment kind of reinforces that. Sometimes we're comfortable with the toxic comfortability. We want that toxic comfortability blanket because it's comfortable and what we used to. It's not that it's better, it's just something we're familiar with.
We don't know anything better, right? So when the parents have been through a tremendous amount of suffering, right? For the parents have been through a tremendous amount of suffering, they're just playing this game, and we think that life is suffering.
Yeah.
Because they don't think in a different way. And you will be surprised how the way of thinking of my grandmother, who raised me until the age of 7, influenced me in my lifetime, right? For example, I'll give you just a short example, Robert. She believed that it's okay for your husband to cheat on you because nothing breaks. Guess what? 2 husbands cheated on me. Right? So I played the same game because of an 80-year-old woman told me something so stupid.
Well,
right? But this is how you play when you take this is why family is crucial, is the cell of everything, right? Because if you have great relationships there, you have a freedom to find your true purpose in life, to get out of suffering. But if you play this game in suffering, you're just gonna replay it in your lifetime.
It's funny when just you mentioned your grandmother, and sometimes it's even something smaller where you look at like recipes that get passed down. We ask how why did you do it this way? We never really reflect.
But we had a client who said, every time when I'm cooking this cake, everybody gets depressive, everybody gets lethargic. We tracked the recipe to her grandmother who lost her lover in the war. And she was crying when she made that recipe. And I said, stop doing it. Stop doing the recipe to put everybody in your family after 80, 100 years in lethargy and in depression because of the recipe. We don't realize how all this energy of pain is moving through generations, including through recipes. We had to discover that because I did not know that, right?
Yeah.
Her. I'm like, stop doing the whole thing. Just find something different. It's like, well, I can try an Italian. Try an Italian thing that you don't know anything about.
Yeah.
And as soon as she tried that, the cake was almost the same, but it didn't put anybody into that state of mind. Yeah. We don't realize how we bring things from, 80, 100 years ago, and we live with those things in sadness, in anger, in pain. We don't.
Yeah. It's interesting because, one of the books that really kind of, was a passion was Viktor Frankl. Back when he wrote the book, Man Behind Meaning, there was this one portion where he's watching everyone in the concentration camp because he was there with other Jews, and he would say the people who did well were the ones giving half their bread. They were there helping other people, And some of them were like, why are you doing this? This is something that will sustain you. Why are you giving? But he said there's something that they saw. They saw that there was another day. They had an idea that there was a hope besides just what they're in, this pain, this what they're in. And that stood out to him, and it stood out to me, because people sometimes experience very similar things. Obviously, everyone's suffering. I'm not minimizing it, but how we respond to it. And just like when Marcus Aurelius, I love it. He said, you have power over your mind, not outside events, maybe. Realize this and you will find strength. There's something about that. Anything you want to add or share?
Yeah, so this is one of the things that we're actually doing, and this is actually level 1 of how we help people overcome depression. You see, there are specific life skills, exactly like you mentioned, when everything is taken away from you, all your family dies, there is a natural cataclysm. There are people that never get depressed, and there are people that get depressed. So they made even research after 40 years to find out how, but they figured out that people that have specific life skills, they never get down. They go up, they rebuild, they move to another country, they get another family, they never go down. The ones that don't have specific life skills, they go down. And those life skills, you'll be shocked to hear, Robert, have to do with relationship mastery, emotional mastery, and mind mastery.
And I feel a lot of that has to, obviously is how we communicate and how we see the world. Like a lot of times, I'm talking to you right now, but we fail at communicating even more so now. We have so many different platforms to speak to each other, but there's never real conversation. I want to just continue.
It's not only that, Robert. The truth is that no amount of talking ever solved the problem. So you can talk with anybody you want about something, unless doing is involved, unless action is involved, right? So we saw, because I was trained as a psychologist over 22 years ago, and I laughed because I left the profession. I said, I'm probably more suicidal than my clients. I cannot do this. I'm sorry. Even if I was, top school in my country. And everybody says, but why? Because you see, no amount of talking, no amount of hearing somebody's story is going to solve it. I cannot solve your past. Okay. Yeah. If you had a dramatic past, whatever happened to you, I'm sorry, I cannot bring the time back and fix it. Right?
Yeah.
But letting go of pain, and there are specific strategies and techniques to do that. Looking at things from different perspective, looking to see how this affected your life in the positive way instead of a negative way, looking at things in a different perspective, this will solve a problem. Right? So talking never solved the problem. We're 7 billion people on the planet, probably half of us are depressed. So talking never solves the problem. So when I hear that people send their kids to therapy and stuff like that, I'm like, you send them for fashion shows, because it's not going to solve anything. Doing will solve it. So it's very important why we're doing this today, right? Because the question is, why we're doing this today? Because this new generation is accelerating. So if you notice, Robert, if it takes you more than 3 clicks to buy something, you're not gonna buy it on the internet. And this is you as an adult, right? Well, my youngest customer in December, when I stepped off a stage with 3 billionaires next to me talking about suicidal rates, you should see how funny it was, because they were not expecting that to me to talk about, right? Suicidal rates in the US. The youngest customer, I found one, I got off a stage and somebody connected with me, was 6 years old suicidal child. This is accelerating, Robert. And this is why, I'm on this podcast and I give you all the credit to raise awareness. Because that mother did not know there is another way for her child. She was totally desperate. What am I doing with 6-year-old? Thank God he doesn't know how to commit suicide yet, right? Well, within 9 weeks, we solved the problem. So raising awareness that there are other ways and you don't have to live like this. But the kids are here in acceleration. They don't want to suffer like we did, Robert, for 27 years, for 3 generations. They don't want to. And sometimes they prefer to take off their life instead of suffering. So here we give them the option. Okay, I can show you how to let go of suffering. Would you be willing to do it? And a lot of times the parent has to do it, so not the child, because the child doesn't understand what's happening to them, right?
Yeah.
So this is why we're having this conversation today. So thank you for bringing me up.
No problem. And when I was thinking of just, I think it's either Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Edison. He said that, "Tell me I may, teach me I may remember. Tell me I will forget. Include me, involve me, I will learn." The idea is there has to be some level of involvement. I'm faith-based leader, but I know this: if the best time in church is 20 years ago, something's wrong. If your idea of your mindset is that I'm just going to learn all this stuff and not do, it's not going to work. It's just not going to work. The idea when I say communication is instilling healthy ways to communicate to one another. That's all. Because sometimes the doing has to happen. Eventually, the hope is that you value that I want to be better today. Sometimes some of my clients, there'll be a lot of things going on with it. I said, just be better today. Sometimes that's all I can say. I don't have I don't have this magic pill. I don't have anything besides myself, and so it's humbling. But I do appreciate your tenacity and this is this generation. I just turned 40, so I know I'm getting the over the hill moment, but I do also remember I'm that age category when I remember when there was no internet, no computers. I remember there was this starting to have personal computers, having a beeper in high school. I remember that kind of thing, but I don't, I just feel it's interesting. There's this one word called vacilando in Spanish. A lot of Latin American people say I'll do it wrong, but in context, it's traveling when the experience itself is more important than destination. Sometimes, it's not that we don't want goals, but sometimes we don't see. We're too close to the elephant to kind of see what's going on. And I do appreciate. I want to hear more on your what your passion is, what brought you to it, and then we'll just kind of see where we go from there. So, can you share with, if you don't mind sharing, what brought you to this? You mentioned your story. You mentioned you lived with this, but a lot of people live with a lot of things. They may get better and I'm done. I'm done. I'm going to do my own thing. What made you do what made you want to really help or go this way?
Well, the truth is that my mentors, for example, how should I say? When I decided to overcome depression, when I acknowledged that I was even depressed, because it's a matter of time until you realize that you are, and you were excluding that situation from your mind, because no, I'm good, I'm fine, and you're just lying to yourself. And it's a period of time when you keep lying to yourself until you're like, no, it's time to wake up. So it was super funny because my mentors, for example, they were not antidepressant experts like I was. So I hired actually 4 mentors to bring me over the bridge. This is how I call it. So there are 2 worlds out there, Robert. There is a world of suffering. Okay, and we know how to play this game very well for 2,000 years since Jesus died. We all play this game. Okay? And there is another world out there where actually God wants you to go. And all these problems and all these pain and all these hurdles, he's trying to push you, go. I don't want you hurt, but you need to make the decision to go over the bridge on the other side. And you need a guide to cross you over the bridge, because you don't know there is a bridge. You don't know there is another place, right? So I hired 4 mentors, and it was super funny. At some point after I finished everything, I got out of depression 7 months. My kid was happy. He was not depressed anymore because he was slipping in depression. And if you know anything about suicidal thoughts, they go over the family, and second or third generation of suicidal thoughts, they really do it. So that was not an option for me as a mother, right? So when I got over it and I was totally out and there is no way of coming back into the world of suffering, right? My mentor said, you're very good to do this job. I'm like, who, me? You have no clue. I just ran away from there. There is no way in hell I'm going back to hell. Okay? There is no way. And I don't even want to remember nothing. It's like I want to have amnesia.
Yeah.
But not me, right? And my mentor said, no, you're perfect to do this because you're depressed since the age of 7. You had all kind of fibromyalgia, back pain since the age of 12. You had suicidal thoughts at the age of 19. You study psychology, you saw this doesn't work. You were an adult child of alcoholic. You were a parent with a depressed child. You went through all of these stages of suffering. And you understand it all even better than we do, who were never depressed. Right?
Yeah.
So this is why I went back to hell, if you want to call it this way, Robert, okay, to fish people out of it. But this is how it is. They need to want that. They have to decide to do this.
Yeah.
If they're comfortable with their pain, they will never make the step. They will never take that leap of faith. They were always wondering why somebody keeps me here, why somebody puts all this pain and illnesses and problems on top of me, when actually God is just trying to push them out of there. That's, and sometimes only pain pushes you out. You don't understand with words. You understand with hurt.
Yeah.
Fortunately, this is how we're wired up as human beings. So this is what I do.
Yeah, and I feel sometimes, people might ask, why do I do what I do? And the reason is I remember one of the biggest things was, especially doing even groups, facilitating groups, is they don't feel hurt. That's it. Like, even at the very basic level, the people really suffering don't feel hurt. So for me, going back in was a reminder of my own journey. That was it. And at the same time, it has helped me. So I feel it's kind of weird because some people are like, won't you want to get away? We have a calendar. If you look at your calendar, I don't know, my calendar, I write things down all the time because I'll forget. And for me, that hell that, you've been through, not minimizing my own experiences, it's not that there's something at least rewarding and reminding myself of what worked. And if it just helps one person or just allows someone to feel something, that there could be something better. Sometimes when we don't think that way, this is word. My wife has this untranslatable words. It's in Welsh. It says, Harath. It says, a homesickness for somewhere you cannot return to. The nostalgia and the grief of a lost place of your past, place that never were. Sometimes when we're in this toxic bubble, we kind of look at things in the past differently than they really were. And sometimes when we don't reflect, we kind of just say, well, the bar is going to be set low this way because that's just life. But I just love your tenacity when you say it doesn't have to be that way.
It doesn't have to be that way. And how should I say, we're talking about a lot of times by the mind, right? And there are actually 17 mind traps that keeps people in suffering, 17 of them, right? They're like jails that you build for yourself, right? And everybody says, oh, how can you beat it? How can you beat it? You actually can beat it through emotional healing. The reason why we're all addicted to pain, we're all addicted to suffering, and we keep repeating the same cycles, sometimes our parent cycles, sometimes whatever we see in front of us, right? Including in love life, right? I teach people how to find true love. That's not possible. If you live the life of suffering, that's not possible for you, but that's very possible for everybody else in the world, right? So through this kind of emotional healing, and there are 5 levels of emotional healing, it is possible, Robert, to live the way you want to, not the way you were conditioned to, not the way other people want to, the way you want to. But the most important thing is to make the decision of not living the same way. For me, with an alcoholic mother, I had 100% chances for my child to be an alcoholic. I would not take that. Because I had suicidal thoughts, I had 100% chances for my child to actually commit suicide. I would not take that chance, right? So here I took the rein and I said, this has to stop now.
Yeah.
And I will do whatever everybody tells me, just get me the hell out, right? So the moment when you're sick and tired of being sick and tired,
the moment
when you realize that everything you tried before did not work, Maybe you didn't try it in the right sequence. Maybe you didn't have a right strategy. Maybe you didn't have a right formula. Because I tried all kind of things, right, before. The moment you get that and you're ready to just surrender, not to dying, surrender to, man, I have no clue how to get the hell out of this.
Yeah.
That moment you can cross that bridge.
Yeah. And I just want to say this has been wonderful, but I want to share this one quote before I ask you what you want to say to those listening today. Resilience is from Yasmin Mogahed. She says, resilience is very different than being numb. Resilience means you experience, you feel, you fail, you hurt, you fall, but you keep going. You know, I feel sometimes, you know, and I'm just saying this, I had a person on the podcast for World Cancer Day. It's February 4th, and the wonderful thing about him, so inspiring. You know, he said, you know, he received the news he's cancer, and he may not. His family he's like, family meeting, and he's like, what? He's like, we're gonna, and they all voted. He's like, what happened? I don't have a choice. And the wonderful thing he saw was that if he didn't have that family, he would give him up. He said he was very candid about it. There's something about just you know when you kind of look at the environment, how we began. You have to build the foundation when it comes to your family and how you respond and how you look at what happened to you in the past. What your family, you could love your family. Doesn't mean you have to agree with what they did before, how they went about things. For me, it's grabbing hold, I guess, of your own value and that you want to really do better. And I just want to put it to you. Any final thoughts you would like to share? This was a wonderful conversation. I'm really glad that you came on. And any last thoughts you want to share with those listening? Everything about what you're doing will be in the notes for those listening and watching. So anything you would like to share?
So, you know that, we don't play the word resilience and the word refugee because, that you are doing, because it's a wonderful thing what you're doing. But for me, it's more important to fish one person out of this situation than 100.
Yeah.
Right. So for me, it's more important to, how should I say, maybe to shock somebody that this is possible, not to play this pain game anymore, right? Yeah. And it's not only possible with my experience. We have I stopped counting. We have over 1,000 families we helped out of these conditions. And we're talking about families. So not necessarily only one person in it. A lot of generational depression too, right? That we helped in the last 2 years, Robert, out of these conditions. When they decided to not play the game of suffering anymore, play the game of life.
Yeah.
Right? So it is possible. It does take a leap of faith. And guess what? The recipe is out there. And I even have it for free on my website.
Okay.
Right? So for anybody out there that you encounter or your audience encounters in these deep moments, you can't really approach them too much because you haven't proved to them that this is possible. I have already proved not only that it's possible to get myself out, it's possible to get thousands of people out, right? So I have the proof already. You might believe it or not, but the proof is there, right? So here's when I tell people, give them a free resource to make their own decision. If they still want to master the game of suffering, which they know how to do it very well, okay? Or they want to master the game of life. And it's scary, exactly like you mentioned, Robert. It's very scary because you have no certainty of what happens on the other side. You have no clue what's happening. Well, you suffered so much, nothing bad can happen anymore. Right?
Yeah.
So these are my final thoughts. This is very, very possible. And I encourage podcasters like you to spread the word and to lift people out of suffering. Teach them how to get out themselves.
I want to say thank you, Anna, for sharing your insight with us today. I want to share, obviously, remember to stay updated with all things Revive Ministries, the various platforms, reviveministriesfl.com, and all of Anna's all her resources, everything that to find her and what she's doing will be in the notes. This is goodbye from Revive Ministry Podcast, leaving with this last quote from Mahatma Gandhi. He says, "Every worthy act is difficult. Ascent is always difficult. Descent is easy and often slippery."